Welcome back to Behind the Barricade. You've been listening for any length of time. You know this podcast exists for one reason, to uncover real performance breakthroughs in construction. Not theory, not trends for the sake of trends, but the kind of thinking and execution that actually moves the needle when projects get complex, margins get thin, and the pressure is on. And today's conversation is one I've been looking forward to for a long time. My guest is Roy Barberi from 84 Lumber. And Roy is one of those rare people who understands construction from the ground up, literally and figuratively. Ray and I have known each other for over a decade. I've watched him navigate growth, complexity, failure, innovation, and leadership in a way that's deeply instructive for anyone in this industry. What makes this episode special is that Roy sits at a fascinating intersection of construction, manufacturing, logistics, technology, and leadership. He's not just supplying materials. He's not just managing teams. He's not just scaling revenues. He's solving one of the biggest problems construction continues to struggle with, communication at scale. Roy grew up in this industry. He didn't enter it through a boardroom. He entered it pulling nails out of boards, cleaning bricks, running forklifts, and learning every part of the operation long before he ever carried a title. That hands-on foundation shaped how he thinks today. He understands what happens when the systems break down and when assumptions creep in and when projects rely too heavily on individual heroics instead of repeatable processes. And that perspective matters right now because, let's be honest, construction productivity hasn't improved much in decades. We've added technology, we've added tools, we've added software, but the results don't always show it. And one of the reasons is something Roy articulates incredibly well in his conversation. We keep relying on habits instead of systems. There's a moment early in the episode where Roy says something that stopped me in my tracks. He says, I believe in systems over habits because systems don't depend on how I wake up in the morning. That one sentence alone is worth a listen. In this conversation, Roy walks through a very real performance wall he hit scaling his operation. He was capped, not by demand, not by talent, but by communication. Too many people, too many handouts, too many disconnected systems between manufacturing, sales, field teams, and the builders. And instead of accepting that limit, Roy did something unusual. He built his own system, not a spreadsheet, not a walk around, an actual application designed to capture, organize, and improve communications across the entire operation. And what happened next is a true performance breakthrough. He scaled from $14 million to over $100 million in revenue, not by working harder, but by working smarter. And what I appreciate most is that Roy doesn't present that as a victory lap. He's candid about failure. He shares a painful story about a major foundation issue that slips through the cracks, a moment where overconfidence, stretched teams, and under-communication collided. And instead of deflecting blame, Roy owns it. He talks about leadership responsibility. He talks about the cost of assumptions. He reinforces a lesson every construction professional needs to hear. However much you think you're over-communicating, you're probably under-communicating. There's another line Roy shares later that sums up perfectly. Measure twice and cut once isn't enough anymore. Today, you probably need to measure 5 or 6 times. That's the reality of modern construction. We spend time looking forward at where performance gains will actually come from in the future. Roy offers a grounded, practical take on AI, technology, innovation that cuts through the hype. His beliefs simple and powerful. Tools don't replace craftsmen. They amplify it. In the hands of great people, the right systems can create extraordinary outcomes. In the wrong hands, they change nothing. And that brings us back to people. Roy is unapologetic, people first. He believes productivity starts with investing in teams, clarity, and leadership, not shortcuts. And that belief shows up everywhere in his story, from how he builds systems to how he handles failure, to how he thinks about the future of the industry. If you're a contractor, a supplier, an owner, a project lead, or anyone responsible for delivering work at scale, this episode will challenge how you think about performance. It will push you to examine where you rely on memory, habit, or heroics, and where systems can save and serve you better. This conversation matters right now because the industry doesn't need more hustle. It needs more clarity, more alignment, and better ways to communicate before problems become expensive lessons. So whether you're running a $5 million operation or $100 million, I think you're going to find something in this episode that sticks with you. Let's get into the conversation with Roy Barberi of 84 Lumber and talk about what real performance breakthroughs look like when systems, people, and leadership come together. Onto the podcast.
Hi, I'm Jim Christian, CEO and founder of Cornerstone, and welcome to Behind the Barricade. And this is a podcast where we explore performance breakthroughs in construction. And I'm so excited about my special guest today, Roy Barberi from 84 Lumber. Roy and I go back over a decade. He's an entrepreneur extraordinaire. And what I'm excited about with this particular podcast is Roy is in our industry, but on the edge of it because he's focused on lumber delivery and installation in the residential home business. But when I've known Roy for so many years and we've talked about so many different stories, there's so many parallels that we can all learn from Roy's experiences, his wisdom, and some twists and turns that he's experienced. So Roy, thanks again for coming. So excited to have you here and welcome to the podcast. And could you just tell us how you got into this industry and your scale and all that's going on at 84 Lumber that you're driving there?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm excited to do anything with you. So, we've been good buddies over the years, and I've really enjoyed that relationship and learned a lot from you as well. Yeah. How did I get started in the industry? Interesting story. My dad was an RC cola salesman eons ago. My mom and dad were early married, and one day he was noticing some manufactured roof trusses and said, that's the future. So quick story on how they got started. They started tearing down houses, and me and my brothers would pull nails out of board and clean bricks, and somehow he sold that. And he's got enough money together that he and my grandfather started a cash and carry lumber yard, and out of nothing, and bought 5 acres and kind of went from there. And it grew into a full manufacturing facility. We had a lumber yard, we had a hardware store, and we built manufactured roof trusses and floor systems and things of that nature down in Florida. At that age, I'm 8, 9, 10 years old. I thought it was exciting just to work with the men. I didn't know what they were doing. I didn't really care what they were doing, but we were all just doing it together. And so, I drove forklifts and repaired them and pulled engines out of things and really got to do every aspect of the business from the ground up as I was voluntold to do so. And my brothers and I were just all in the middle of it in Florida. And we were a small company. We were not huge. We had, 25 employees, but it was really interesting. And as that grew, somewhere around the age of 15 or 16, computers began to be introduced into the industry. I was a very early adopter. My first one was an Apple IIe with 2 floppy drives and no hard drive. And for some reason, I got the manual to this thing related to doing engineering around the manufactured aspect of it. And the manuals just made sense to me. And I just had an early aptitude for that for whatever reason. And so I adopted that quickly and grew quickly in the industry around that, as that gave me national exposure based on these large companies that were supplying metal-connected fasteners to these trusses. So wow. I grew in that. Fast forward, I become a young man, an adult, and I'm married and have a few children. And unexpectedly, as divorce happens, that happened. My parents divorced, and I immediately had an opportunity pop up. I moved to Tennessee to start a lumberyard and truss plant. I was terrified. It was my first test to find out, did I know what I thought I know? And I said I did, but I quickly found out whether I did or didn't, because I got to install the manufacturing equipment, hire the people, do all the aspects of that. And about 18 months into that, we were doing, the owner had a goal of $100,000 a month. And I thought, well, I'm going to starve if that's all we do. And so we were about 8 months in, and we were pushing around $500,000. And I had some horses and land because we're in Tennessee, so we're trying to do the Tennessee thing. I got thrown from a horse, crushed my hip, went out for surgery. Oh, no. While I was out, he sold that. So long story short, I had a bunch of customers in Nashville at that point. There was no one in the residential business supplying materials and doing turnkey operations where I would go in and completely supply all the building materials at a guaranteed number, and I would frame the house, erect it, and that sort of thing. And so had a great opportunity as I had seen some experience of that out of Florida and was doing that for that company. So I had a lot of national builders who we were deeply in relationship at that point, even in 18 months. And so 84 Lumber, lo and behold, needs someone to kick off manufacturing in Nashville. And one of my national home building partners at the time knew the CEO of 84 Lumber and called them in 84, Pennsylvania and said, "Hey, I got a guy who can do this if that's what you want to do." And long story short, I took that role with them and brought 5 guys over. We disassembled an 84 Lumber store and yard and turned it into the first manufacturing plant. And the biggest store in 84 Lumber in this particular market, Nashville, Tennessee, at that time was around $3 million. And so I was like, I think I'm the right guy at the right time in this company's history where they're ready to invest in this. And I think I have the customers and the knowledge to help this kick off. So I literally did all the engineering drawings in the beginning. I read all the blueprints and kind of started over. So all of the things that I didn't want to learn with my dad, but did, I owe to him today what I can do and my older brother. And so that led me to the opportunity I currently have with 84 Lumber as a market manager and a person who started manufacturing and all of our national programs for the stores that really serve all of Middle Tennessee and Huntsville. I was told you can't do it so many times and I just laughed. Yeah. I was like, I've got children. We're gonna.
Well, you have a lot of children, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, we do. We've got 12 children and 7 biological with my wife, Allison. We've been married 38 years now, I guess. Wow. And then we adopted 5 kids from Liberia. I think it's been, 19 years ago today. So they're all young adults figuring it out there, doing their thing today. But
Amazing.
Kind of a big group.
Not to feed, to make you hungry to do what you need to do.
Yeah. Little did I know that, in 2006, when we adopted them, that we were going to have 2008 shortly thereafter, and I'd have an elevated grocery bill. So very interesting times for sure.
Okay, great. Well, Roy, I know that you have a big breadth of knowledge, but before the podcast, we were talking about a big performance breakthrough that you experienced in your development at 84 Lumber. And what I was really curious and excited about this story is how you came up with a solution to really scale faster and really go at a rate that you hadn't been, and the secret to that. So would you mind sharing that story, what the wall was you were hitting up to and how you broke through it and what's happened since?
Yeah. And so I love this story because it's one that worked out well. And I was really excited about the solution and the approach to it. So to frame the problem, and I think the problem still exists in the industry, and I think it's beginning to be addressed by a lot of the large lumberyards across the country. There's so many people involved in the communication side of when you're manufacturing products. You've got a few hundred people there, you've got all this equipment, you have massive buildings, you have all these things going on. And then we have teams of people that are operators at our store. And then we have inside sales coordinators pulling down all these orders. And then we have our customers and their field teams and their leadership teams and all that. And so there is really not a good mechanism to harness the communication between the two of those. Now, there is things like Bill Pro and Supply Pro, which our home builders use, and those things deliver POs and have some communication systems, but they're really designed as a one-way mechanism for the builder and not the building material supplier or the labor supplier. And so it was a real challenge, and we were really just constrained around how to communicate effectively at scale when you're framing a house. The amount of communication it takes. There's a reason they pay people to build houses to keep people from divorcing if they were to do it themselves. And so home builders play an important role, even though it's frustrating to get a house built. So I was trying to figure out, how do we improve this communication? Because that's the thing holding all of us back from doing more, because we can't go any faster because things will break. And that's just not good for anyone involved. It costs the builder money, it costs us money, and it hurts our reputation, which reputation capital in construction, or really any business, is really all you have. And so I've always been a big believer in systems over habits. I think habits are difficult and they depend on how I wake up today or tomorrow, or who kicked me yesterday or whatever. And I don't I don't like those. And so I think systems are better. And as I began to think through this in my early days with computers, I really thought, I thrive on systems. And so my oldest son, Alex, somewhere around 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, we started talking about programming and games and all these things. And so he excelled even more so than I did in that area. And so we just started developing our own application just for me and my internal teams. And over the course of 3 or 4 years, we developed this thing and I called it 84 Sales. And it was really designed around harnessing a conversation between all of our teams and all of our field people. How do we use that tool to put those people in a better position to be fully present and either on the job, if that's their role, or whatever those administrative things may be around finance. And as we continue to develop that over 3 or 4 years, it began to take hold. Prior to this application, I was capped, which was a pretty great number at the time, at somewhere around $14 million in sales. And I was acting very much like an individual salesperson who was doing really well in a single market. But my aspirations were much more than that. And I thought, if I can harness this thing, I can have a huge impact on all of our team's daily lives because they're just grinding it out. And I can have more impact because we can help serve more customers, which means we can have more team members, which means we provide more jobs. And I get to hang out with more people. Most people know that I enjoy relationships a great deal. And so that means a lot to me. And so over time, we developed this and it's really coming along and the communication's improving. We have a few stumbles and revisions and these things, but now I'm at 40, $50 million. I'm at $60 million and I keep getting these sizable year over year improvements. And so I have in mind to make this a public product because it might serve a lot of other industry people because I don't see a good tool for this out there. 84 Lumber, Kurt Ott, who is in a position over manufacturing, I've been friends for years. I've learned so much from him about business and the industry. And he said, pump the brakes on that. Let's talk about this because we're actually looking for something nationwide. Long story short, they buy the application and we spent the past 5 or so years integrating that nationally, and it's now used nationally for that. Wow. And we ended up using the tool and the breakthroughs that it brought to us in communication and tracking and back-end warranty and just our ability to serve at the next level and try to provide a better record set a couple of years down the line back to the builder when they have an issue or a leak or a thing later. And ended up growing business for me to somewhere around $105 million, which is in many industries not a big number, but in a role like mine, it's a phenomenal number. Certainly people inside of 84 Lumber who do more, but I was really proud of that and that communication and accurate document sets and the ability to just keep people in their primary roles more, not all the time, but more, I think really led to that opportunity and that success. Super excited about that. It was kind of hard to hand over one of my children the application to 84 Lumber, but they could write much bigger checks than I could, and so right. we've had a blast helping 84 continue to grow the capabilities of that.
I loved your opening line there that you like systems over habits because they just run and it doesn't depend on how you wake up in the morning. I think that's a really good analogy for us all to think about. Like, where is the wall that we're facing today? How do we systematize it? And certainly, as you and I are in the Michael Hyatt AI mastermind, it's becoming more and more accessible for us to come up with these systems solutions if we can get our mind around how to do it. So you were way ahead of AI with the development of this, but
I think the principle remains the same. I think the biggest challenge around all of that really, and Jim, you know this because we've been in the same set of training for years and years together and grown, is getting clarity around what is the actual challenge that needs to be solved. And then the tools will follow. That sounds like it's right out of Michael's mouth, and it basically is because he really helped us with that. But that's how the tool came about, is really trying to define that real challenge that was at the crux of it. So thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, for everything. And then, it's amazing how a system can really 10x your business and
absolutely
service X the customers and all the things that you mentioned. So, Roy, I know people might now be thinking that Roy walks on water, has this great life, never faces a problem, never has an obstacle to overcome. But I think you might have a story about where you've seen a failure in performance and what your thinking is on what caused it and what you have to pay attention to not have it happen again.
Yeah. So first of all, just to help clarify for everyone, I wake up and I grunt every day. If you're in our business, you know what I'm talking about. And there are not days where you coast if you want to lead. There are days where you want to coast. There are days when you think about coasting, but the circumstances never allow that. So that cushy reality doesn't exist for anyone. And I think it's important for people to hear that. I think that there are days that are darker and more difficult than others because I'm a person. I think that's why systems matter more than ever, because when I'm having a bad day, the rest of my team can run on a well-oiled track that is aimed intentionally at solving specific challenges. And so things look better and perform better than with just depending on me. Now, related to a specific challenge, oh boy, like I've had so many places where I've misjudged things for what they are in reality, because I tend to want to believe the best in people until they prove me wrong. And I don't want to quit living that way, but it does come with its challenges. So some things have happened around that. And, we all will check in with our people who are checking in with people as you build a team, right? And so you believe what you believe because you believe in the people you believe in, if that sounds to make sense. And so sometimes really good people get overwhelmed, which means that their version of their own reality is a little skewed, if that's a reasonable way to put that.
Yeah.
Because I know I've been deluded enough to believe my own lies occasionally. So that must be true for others. And, we've had projects where we're building massive homes for people. And so in our world, they'll say the foundation is everything. And I'm sure it's the same in every business and industry. And it certainly is. And so if we don't start with a good foundation, it's really difficult. And often when you get to the tail end of a subdivision, you've got the worst lots, they've got the worst foundation conditions and lot conditions, and there's water and all these things. So we had such a lot. And I'll highlight this one and frame it the best way I can frame it, if you will. Because that's what we do. And our teams went about their work. We were all spread a little thin, and had some people who were out of the office at the wrong times. And in our business, like every business, pre-construction meetings rule the day. Everything we do on the front end prepares us for success when we launch our teams, whether that's pre-construction meeting on every new home, every new site with our building contractor, and then with our building trades who are doing the work, and with our leadership teams who are managing those sites. I hold team meetings with basically my 30 direct reports around that every 2 weeks to try to make sure we're on track. That's a meeting where we can talk and argue about anything they want to, but they will lead with a decision so they can go back out and try to focus on execution. In this particular case, I think all failure leads to leadership at some point. Like, what could I have done differently for a different outcome? So I certainly take this on myself because I had spread myself a bit thin at the time. So we had a bad foundation. We had a guy who was spread a little thin. The guy between him and me was spread a little thin and didn't realize he had kind of checked out and was moving on to some other situation, going through difficult personal times. And long story short, the foundation was about 4 inches out of level on a massive 4-story project. It was really a 3-story with a massive walkout basement to some creek property on the back. We didn't realize that there was an issue with the inspection where there was a water table issue around this foundation. Some things got squirrely. We had a frame contractor who attempted to cut each of the framing studs a different length to compensate. And let's just say it all didn't go well. It didn't go well at all. A homeowner, the builder doesn't catch it. We don't catch it. And every trade that comes behind it is stretched thin. This was during COVID. So you can imagine there were some challenging things from every venue at that point, supply chains, and just on and on and on. We can talk about them. But in this particular case, this one home caught us off guard. Homeowner moves in and their kids drop a marble on the thing and the thing rolls to the back of the house. And come to find out the house is, we'll just call it a few inches out of plumb towards the back of the home. It's a big problem. So, we did all the right things. We made it right with the builder, but what a challenge, and what an expensive challenge, and a painful one. And it was embarrassing for us to not have done a better job to support the builder, regardless of the fact that someone else should have caught that and all those other trades, and someone's running trim downhill and cabinets downhill. None of that matters. We were at the beginning. We should have pumped it. We could have done a better job on the front end. And, pain is a powerful teacher. We've talked about that before. And so we really learned some difficult, hard lessons through that. But that was probably one of the more recent experiences that is not what we want to deliver to our customers. We've certainly rectified a process and a system around that going forward, but I think we all going to have those days. If you're trying to do anything at scale, you're going to have some things that are not great happen. And I think a lot of people might want to cower from that. I tend to run towards my problems, because the quickest way to get through a problem is to just get on it. Let's go,
So if you had to sum that whole story up, what would you want people to take away from that story?
However hard you think you're over communicating, you're not, you're under communicating. Whenever you think you're clear, you are dealing with the curse of knowledge, and you are under communicating with not as much clarity. So you need to measure twice and cut once. I know that's oversimplifying, but everyone in this venue will understand what that means. And so really, in today's environment, I really think you got to measure 5 or 6 times, because the chain of custody to get a job done today is different than it used to be. People used to all be on site all the time. And today we deal with a lot of remote groups and management. So, invest the time up front. It's always the way to win when you're building a home.
And make sure you have got a good level.
Yeah, we have laser levels and all the tools, and sometimes the best laid plans and systems fail.
Yeah.
But it's always all about the people, right?
Well, thanks for sharing such a vulnerable story, Roy.
Whew.
I think
pain.
Yeah, didn't mean to take you back to that big pain point, but
PTSD. No, I'm good.
Yeah, and COVID and all that goes along with that. Well, thanks for sharing it. I really appreciate it. And there's lessons in there for everybody. There's things to learn from that. And measure twice, cut once is something my dad taught me all those years ago.
Absolutely.
So as we start to look ahead into the future, what would your advice be to people in this industry? What trends are you thinking they should be looking at? What trends are you looking at? Where's your mindset as far as where this industry is going? Like, one of the reasons we started this podcast is the research that we were looking at shows that productivity in construction for a couple of decades, if not, some studies even say longer, has been flat. There's been no improvement in productivity, which is really hard to accept with all the gains that we've seen with technology and communication and all that. But if you were saying, hey team, hey people listening to this podcast, these are the trends we need to be looking at, what would they be?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. I think it's good to frame some of the things I'm going to talk about with, a personal philosophy I have around business. I think that the most important thing that we can invest in is always people. It's people first, everything else second. And if those things get out of line, then you're going to have the resulting problems and you're going to be stuck, because then it's all based on your ability and what you can do. And I don't want anything based on that. I want to be really deep with our customers. I want to be really deep with them, because I have teams who we've invested in and who are the right people and who are just capable of doing a great job without me being there. So I just want to say that as a caveat. I believe when I'm working with a customer, I want to invest in their people. It's the same thing. I think any productivity gains we're going to have are going to be really about people, and then how we help them learn the fundamentals of execution. I do think there are some significant industry trends going on out there that we need to pay attention to. So I try to very intentionally spend 10 to 20% of my days, weeks, years investing in the future incremental progress in particular areas. And that means that I invest in things like Michael Hyatt's AI Business Mastermind. I'm not necessarily making this an ad for that, but it's an example, a great example of how a business owner should always be in training about what are we going to do to improve not only myself, our teams, our companies, and our bottom lines, but these things affect the industry. And I'm fortunate enough to work with a lot of national home builders who have a national presence and who have exposure to multiple markets around the country. So there's so many innovations coming out, and they're constantly trying to learn new things around how do they build a better home around energy and these other things. So I think you've got to decide if this is what you're going to do, if this is the industry you're going to be in, and how do you continuously improve and educate yourself and your teams around these upcoming tools that are there. Is AI one of those? Absolutely, it is. And you and I have been working through a bunch of that. But I think AI is one of those things, and the tool of a master craftsman, it's going to make them look like a super agent. Oh, they're going to do incredible things. I think, to put it in another vernacular, if you give Eddie Van Halen a $6,000 guitar, he's going to sound like Eddie Van Halen. But I can tell you, if you gave that guy a $20 guitar, he's still going to sound like Eddie Van Halen. So the tool enhances things in the hands of a master craftsman. And I think that's why people are going to be at the center of any productivity gains we have. And so people first, everything else second, invest in continuous improvement in yourself. And your people are never going to do that unless they see you doing it. With 12 children, there's one thing I learned about business and life and family, painfully. And people will do what you do and not what you say. I know these are really old adages, but human nature being what it is, and I'm just an average guy, it's useful to learn that. Hopefully that's helpful. I think economically, as far as the industry goes, we can talk about all those things. It all goes in cycles. We all get new administrations in our countries, and those things ebb and flow, and those things are what make us all interesting and great and that sort of thing. But, the cycles are going to continue, whether financial or otherwise. We're lucky in my industry. As long as people keep making babies, we're still going to need homes for people in, and we're short homes in the United States by millions today. So the affordability crisis will somehow get solved, or someone will improve wages at some point. That's not my venue to talk about, but I'm saying those things will get solved, and don't get sidetracked on what your mission is. I believe my mission is to do the best job that I'm capable of with my team. And whatever it is, I would just do it better than the next guy and try to improve our relationship capital and trust with those people we're doing it for and the teams I'm doing it for. Because I ask a lot of trust of those people when they stick their neck on the line for me as well.
Well, Roy, you are just a wealth of knowledge and wisdom. And
it's hilarious to hear you say that.
I love
I'm passionate about what we do, and I love it.
I love hanging out with you, and I feel privileged and humbled that we know each other so well and have had years together doing what we've been doing. Roy, if anybody wanted to reach out to you as a follow-up to this, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn like everyone else in our business. I think that's an amazing tool. And so find me out there, hit me up or whatever, or it's roy@roybarberi.com if you want to shoot me an email. I love talking about our industry.
Well, as we bring this to a close, Roy, I need you to share where you're doing this podcast from. Roy, as I said in the intro, is an entrepreneur extraordinaire, and he can't tell you everything he's got his fingers in because we just don't have that much time. But tell us where you're doing this podcast from and what's going to be what you do in that space. It's so cool.
Wow. Well, this is really fun. I have a large family, and so any other business that I started, and I love business, and it's a pleasure because it's another project I get to organize, right? So I wanted to do any of that business with my family, so I'd have an opportunity to lead, teach, and train my children how to go further, faster than I did. And so this is a 10,000 square foot building in the beautiful area of Brentwood, Tennessee, just south of downtown Nashville. And we have an all arts academy here, started as an idea to try to find a place to bring 12 kids to instead of drag them all over the universe. And so we have about 500 to 600 students, depending on the time of year. And we'll do around 12 musical theater programs out of here a year, and roughly the same number of circus programs. And so we would have to make this a separate thing, but we love kids, obviously, and wanted to invest in them more. So we built this out. And in this building, 5,000 square feet is dedicated to education. And on the side that I'm in right now, we have a roughly 200-seat venue with amazing high-tech equipment in it that's best in class around music and all of these other video aspects or whatever. And then we host live bands and video shoots, and we rent it out for conferences and beauty pageants. And, part of my old life, like everyone in Nashville now that I'm here, a musician. And so we have an 80s rock band where I have people from the 70s and 80s band Boston and All Star United, and these great musicians are here. And so we do a show once a month. So a lot of interesting things we get to do in this space. And I'm in that space right now with a few of our team members, hopefully making me look a little better than I do in real life.
You look great. Here's a commitment to you. The next time I'm in Nashville, we got to go see this place. I want to go see it.
I would love it. It's so much fun to share.
I didn't realize it was so close. Like, I didn't realize it was in Brentwood.
Yeah, we're probably, from where we have our mastermind, I'm probably 2.5, 3 miles away. So
let's do it. Let's make that a commitment.
Love it.
And look forward to it.
Coffee will be hot.
Yeah, there you go. Well, thanks, Roy. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to share some wisdom and insights with us. Thank you. Thank you to all that are listening. Our mission here at Cornerstone is to create a better journey for our clients, our staff, our project partners, and ultimately the world. And we really see this podcast as a way to help the world, help everyone in the industry. So thanks for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode. Have a good day, Roy. Good to be with you.
We'll see you later.